Today we're talking about how nationalistic Christianity is a growing threat to your freedom. And as many of you know, I am a religious trauma syndrome survivor. I'm an ex-Christian, and this is a topic that's really important to me, and it's important that we spread awareness about this. And you guys hear me talk all the time about how we need to spread awareness about religious trauma syndrome, because people think religion is relatively benign, but the fact is that it causes very bad issues, mental issues regarding, mimics the symptoms of PTSD and CPTSD. But likewise, we need to spread awareness on how it affects the world at large and your freedoms, because this isn't just, something that's relatively benign. There are very radical groups out there that want to take away your freedom and transform America and really the world eventually into a theocracy. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. It's extremely important. Now, right off the bat, I want to remind you guys that I and we are not against people, we're against ideas. So we're not against any group like Christians, we're against Christianity. We are against the ideas, and that's a very important thing to understand. And another thing that I want to address right off the bat is some people will ask me, well, how come I don't talk about Islam? How come it's always about Christianity? And there are two reasons for that. One reason for that is because I am an ex-Christian, so I am very familiar with Christianity. So I feel that I have some sort of reason to speak about the topic. And then the other reason is that due to the current social climate and how the world is currently set up, on social media platforms, it's very difficult to criticize Islam. It's something that could put me and my account in jeopardy. So unfortunately, I can't do that for that limitation. In the future, though, I would, because, in addition to being against Christianity, we are also against Islam as well. So we are against all forms of mainstream religion. We want to build a world based on reason, not faith. So let's take a look at this and see how we have, radical groups growing nationalistic Christianity and how they want to transform the world into a theocracy. So here we have an article from The Guardian that says radicalized Christian nationalism is a growing threat to American democracy. A relatively small but incredibly organized faction is working to turn the country into something resembling a theocracy. And again, the reason why I think that this is so important is because people think that Christianity is relatively benign. And my whole point is, no, it's not. We need to raise awareness about this. For example, I suffer from religious trauma syndrome, which mimics the effects of PTSD and CPTSD. So many people do. It needs to be spoken up about. And it also needs to be realized that Christianity also causes people to want to transform the world according to Christian values. If people want to just believe what they believe, and that's totally fine. I have no problem with people believing whatever they want to believe. But when you start to try and force your beliefs on others, when those beliefs are freedom-limiting beliefs, and you also start to brainwash the minds of children, degrading their ability to rationalize, inflicting trauma upon their minds, emotional damage, then we have a real problem. So let's see what this has to say. Forget everything you ever thought you knew about pregnancy. A 26-year-old congressman, and this is written kind of sardonically, it's sarcastic, but so forget everything you ever knew about pregnancy. A 26-year-old congressman who will never be pregnant himself has helpfully stepped in to explain the process to everyone. A fetus is just like a photograph, according to Madison Cawthorn, a right-wing congressman from North Carolina. During an anti-abortion speech on the House floor last week, Cawthorn proclaimed that having an abortion is like snatching a half-developed photograph of a sunset out of someone's hands and ripping it to shreds. It's weird. You could almost see his brain working it out as he spoke. A photo develops, an embryo develops. Wow, I'm very smart. These metaphors are so strange that people use. By the way, Hyperionism is absolutely pro-choice. If you don't know, we're for pro-choice, women's liberation. We're accepting of all, races, genders, sexuality, and not just. I hate the word like accepting. How about celebrating? Like everyone just, oh well, we should accept. How about celebrating? Like I don't know. Accepting just has this weird view of like, all right, I don't know. It has this connotation that I don't like to it. Like, oh well, I guess we'll accept you. It's like, no, everyone should be celebrated. We should be flourishing. And I know that's really not what's meant by accepted, but still, it has a weird connotation to it. Like almost like, well, I am in a position of authority and I deem that you are worthy, so I shall accept you. just is a little weird to me. I don't like it. Anyway. So anyway, we're not accepting, we're celebratory. Let's celebrate each other, celebrate our differences, celebrate what makes us unique. Not just accept. You know, it's almost like begrudge. I guess I accept it. I don't, it's just, anyway. So anyway, continuing, I'm afraid it gets worse. Having delivered this tortuous analogy, Cawthorn, who, by the way, has been accused of sexually harassing college classmates and once advised mothers, if you're raising a young man, please raise them to be a monster, then switched to religious rhetoric. Now, by the way, that's another thing is that, you know, all these people that you have that are trying to create a theocracy or this religious world, they often, you know, if you look, now this isn't ubiquitous, but if you look, they often have done some horrible things in their life as a result of shadow projection, really usually the opposite of what they preach about, because they bottle up all of their shadow content. This leads to shadow projection. You know, it was like we did a video a while back ago. Check it out. I think it's on my channel somewhere about this politician who was anti-gay rights, and then they discovered that he was having sex with a man in his office or something like that. Now you find this all the time, which is just a clear indication of shadow projection. If you don't know, shadow projection is when you try to eliminate something in others or the world because you actually have it in yourself. And so it creates psychological discomfort, and it can help ease that psychological discomfort if you try and eliminate it in something outwards rather than acknowledging that it's actually internal. So Cawthorn continues, eternal souls woven into earthen vestals, sanctified by Almighty God and endowed with the miracle of life are denied their birth, Cawthorn declared grandly. Weirdly, a lot of women weren't too keen on being described as earthen vessels, and Cawthorn's remarks quickly caused online outrage. Whenever women get upset about their rights being taken away by misogynistic extremists, you can always rely on a reasonable man to swoop in and explain how everyone's overreacting. This incident was no exception. Grayson Quay argued in the week that women getting angry on the internet had misunderstood the biblical passages, to which Cawthorn was alluding. It seems Cawthorn, a vocal and evangelical Christian, was using earthen vessels to refer not to the woman's body, but to the body of the unborn baby. Now, even if that is what Cawthorn was referring to, is that much better? The separation of church and state is supposed to be a pillar of U.S. democracy. We should be alarmed by politicians who seem to think they are actually preachers. And, you know, that's very true. You know, it's always like separation of church and state. That's clearly not true at all. And another just sort of interesting interjection, I always think it's very odd when Christianity, when it refers to eternal souls, I always think that's very odd because eternal means having no beginning or end. That's what eternal means, having no beginning or end. And it's always odd to me because in Christianity, God creates everything, including souls. So souls clearly had a beginning. They're not eternal in the true sense of the word. Very strange. But anyway, I digress. And here's a really important point that well, a couple things. First of all, remember, we are very pro-life. Hyperianism is pro-life. And that's because, you know, whereas you might have a monadic link being established in a fetus, possibly, you know, possibly that's the case. If that's the case, you know, if that fetus is destroyed, you're not destroying the actual mind. You're destroying just that body, and that mind can find another avatar to link to. You have not impeded its progress very much because it didn't have a chance to develop. Whereas the impediment to that woman's life, or, you know, or someone who has the capability of giving birth to a child, not just relegating it to the gender of female, but any gender that has the capability of giving birth, a birth giver, that might impede their actualization very much if they're not ready for it, if it would be a, you know, burden monetarily, if they're just, you know, not psychologically prepared, if they just don't want to because they have other things that they want to accomplish in life. You have all these different elements, and plus, if that child is unwanted, they're going to have a very hard time living as best life as they possibly could. Whereas, you know, if you just have a monadic link established somewhere else, it's not a big deal. So anyway, okay, so another thing that I also want to point out to you. because we're going to continue. It says, Cawthorn, after all, isn't the only high-profile figure who seems to be trying to advance a Christian nationalistic agenda. So here's something else that I want to kind of point out, because, you know, they're talking about this in terms of like radical Christianity, extremism. And while that may be true, I have a lot of people say, oh, well, I know so-and-so, they're a Christian and they're so nice and they're accepting of everyone, etc. And so here's something I want to clarify, though. Remember, I grew up in a strict Christian household. I have experience with Christianity. And for people on the outside who don't, that you might not really understand what Christianity does. Now, I'm not saying this is ubiquitous. I'm sure that there are some Christians out there who are very accepting. However, most other Christians would think that they're not really Christians if they are. So here, let me explain it like this. You meet someone and they're like, oh, they're this super nice person and they seem like they're accepting of everyone. But here's where it comes down to. It seems like that from the surface. Now, I'm not saying this is ubiquitous, but this is my experience, having been a Christian. If you go to a church, they might be accepting of LGBTQ by allowing them to come in to the service. However, they still think they're sinful, and they still want to have the agenda of trying to remove them of their sin to convert them from their practicing of sin in the opinion of Christianity. So the only reason why they're accepting, and I'm doing it quotes because they're not really, the only reason why they're accepting of LGBTQ is not because they actually are, but because they want to bring them in to change them. So you're not actually accepting if you think that they are sinful and want to change them. Okay? So remember that what you see is not always what you get. If they're like, oh, well, we accept everyone. That might be true for some churches, right? Some churches might actually be open, and that's cool if they are. They're somewhat more progressive. However, I'm just saying, with my experience, most churches will say that, but they aren't actually, they just want to convert the person and get them to realize their sin. Another thing that I want to say is that the idea of, well, it's Christian radicals that are trying to change America into a theocracy, they might be the ones that are trying to kick it off, but all the other people who are involved in Christianity will support that. Like might be nice, they might be nice to you on the street, but you can be sure as hell that they're most likely to vote for something that's going to take away your freedom. So they can bake you cookies all day long or do whatever. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, they're probably going to vote for something that's geared towards taking your rights away. So, always keep that in mind. Now, again, look, I'm not saying this applies to all Christianity, but I think it's a lot more prevalent than people think. I have firsthand experience of that. What you see is not always what you get. Very, very often, it's taught in Christianity to be nice for the purpose of converting people. Like that's taught. It's taught that you need to be a good, to show people how happy you are, how great your life is, how nice you are, for the purpose of people to look at you and go, oh, you know what? There must be something to this Christianity thing. Look at how nice and happy so-and-so is. I should probably convert to Christianity. So for a lot of people, this is a ploy. This is a tactic. Anyway, I just want to make it clear that it's talked about in terms of radical extremist Christianity, but it's a lot more prevalent than you might think. It's not just like this small group. Christianity as a whole, for the most part, is pretty nefarious. So, and speaking of this, by the way, I know I read these verses all the time, but I just want to do it one more time in case someone hasn't seen my videos, just to emphasize the sexism in Christianity. I know you guys have heard this a million times, but I just want to read it one more time. These verses come from the New Testament. A woman should learn in quietness and full submission. I do not permit a woman to teach or to assume authority over a man. She must be quiet, because Adam was formed first and then Eve. And Adam wasn't the one deceived. It was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. But women will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith, love, and holiness with propriety. So you see already in this verse, what is it saying? Women are second to men, and their purpose is to have children. They have to be quiet. They can't teach. They're second place to men, and they should give birth to children. And so you can see how this narrative infects like anti-abortion activists and things like this. It's rooted in the belief system of Christianity. A lot of people don't know this. They're not aware of the extremely distasteful verses that are still taught today. Like another one, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, just as Christ is the head of the church, his body of which he is the Savior. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. Really bad stuff. And this is commonly taught. This is not some, obscure, archaic thing. No, this is, you go learn this in church. So let's just continue, though, this article. Cawthorne, after all, isn't the only high-profile figure who seems to be trying to advance a Christian nationalist agenda. Josh Hawley, a pro-Trump senator from Missouri, has spoken about the need to take the lordship of Christ, that message, into the public realm, and to seek the obedience of the nations, of our nation, to influence our society, and even more than that, to transform our society to reflect the gospel truth and lordship of Jesus Christ. This is a senator. Does it sound like separation of church and state? Is this something that you want? Do you want the nation to reflect, and not just nations, do you want that to reflect, for example, the verses that I just read, that women are second to men, have to submit to their husbands in everything, and are simply to give birth to children? Do you want that to be established throughout the world? I certainly hope not. My whole point here is that religions like Christianity and like other ones, a lot of other ones that I can't really, look at what's going on. This isn't just relegated to America and Christianity. Look what's going on in the Middle East. Same, if not worse, things are happening there as well. It's a big threat, and it's important to understand that. It's important to realize this is not just some benign thing that your grandmother believes because it helps her sleep at night. It's a big problem, and it's going to affect you. Look what happened in Texas, and Florida attempted to do the same thing. Look at all these attempts, and these attempts are just going to keep building. And then, of course, there's Michael Flynn, who served as Donald Trump's first national security advisor, NSA, in 2017. Last month, Flynn made headlines by calling for the establishment of one religion in the United States. He said, if we're going to have one nation under God, which we must, we have to have one religion. And this is in the, the Pledge of Allegiance. One nation under God. Does that sound like separation of church and state to you? One nation under God and one religion under God, Flynn said. You want that religion? Like those verses I just read to you? Do you want that to be established by law? I guarantee you that would be law. If, you would see loss of rights everywhere. You'd see women's rights being lost. You'd see LGBTQ rights being lost. And again, those, I don't care how many cookies so-and-so bakes you. If they're voting to take your rights away, are they really actually nice? I mean, think about it. Just because they act nice, put a smile on their face, bake you cookies, but if they're going to vote to take your rights away, don't be fooled. And remember, I am not against Christians. I'm against Christianity, because I think that people have just been ensnared by this brainwashing belief system, and people need to be freed from that. So I could go on and on. There are endless examples of influential leaders in the US calling for a Christ-centered republic. So there are tons and tons and tons of examples of this. And for the Bible to influence policy. But while that rhetoric is alarming, it's not as alarming as what's been happening behind the scenes. In 2008, because this is what's just been said publicly. So can you imagine what's happening behind the scenes? In 2018, the researcher Frederick Clarkson exposed the existence of a Christian supremacist initiative called Project Blitz, which aimed to flood state legislatures with bills undermining the separation of church and state. A 116-page strategy manual laid out the plan. 1, they'd smuggle Christianity into policy with covert strategies that gave the appearance that they respected religious pluralism. You see? This is not, there is strategy behind this. Smuggle Christianity into policy, giving the appearance that they respect religious pluralism. The playbook advised legislators to cloak their religious mission in the guise of more secular intentions, and they've renamed several bills to make them sound more appealing. Clarkson reported, too, that they'd overwhelm state legislators with so many bills that trying to fight them would be like a game of whack-a-mole. 3, they'd start with less controversial bills, such as requiring or allowing the display of "In God We Trust" in public schools, and establish small victories first, then they'd escalate. So be very, very, very careful. Now remember, we are not conservative, we are not liberal, we are for truth, we are for logic, we are for reason. So be very careful of thinking that you're on the right side by tolerating religion because you want to tolerate everyone, when their goal, not all of them, but some, is to sneakily and slowly establish a theocracy. So be careful. Clarkson, reporting on Project Blitz and the various exposés that followed, forced the project's organizers into stealth mode, but they haven't disappeared. Far from it. Radicalized Christian nationalism is a growing threat to American democracy. As a relatively small but incredibly organized faction working to turn the country into something resembling a theocracy. Indeed, if the insurrection on the 6th of January had gone ever so slightly differently, people like Flynn might be turning their dreams of one nation under God into a reality at this very moment. We came very close. We came very, very close. And who's to say that that won't just continue and get more and more prevalent and radical? It's very possible. So I think the whole point of this is, look here, my goal is to wake up the world to many different things. And one of those things is the danger of mainstream religion. This is why we're very much opposed to mainstream religion. If you can believe whatever you want, honestly, I don't care. Believe whatever you want. But there's a problem when you start trying to take other people's rights away and you're brainwashing children, etc. Because now it's just beyond you believing what you want to believe. You're trying to inflict your beliefs upon others, which result in a limitation of freedom. Now, what we want to do is we want to build a Hyperion meritocracy where our goal is to institute laws that maximize freedom. We're not trying to take anyone's freedoms away. We're trying to maximize freedoms. So you see, there's a big difference between, like, let's say, for example, abortion. Freedom is being able to choose if you'd like to have an abortion or not. We're not limiting anyone's freedom. If you believe that abortion is wrong, that's fine. Don't get an abortion. But we are not instituting laws that make one, that strip away one's freedom in that regard. You see, that's a completely different thing. By forcing everyone or banning abortion, for example, now you've limited freedom. So we want to establish a world where freedom is maximized. And again, you can believe whatever you want. That's fine. Believe what you want. That's fine. But you can't start trying to inflict your beliefs on others if those beliefs are stripping people of some of their fundamental rights and fundamental freedoms. And you can't be brainwashing children and harming the next generation of minds. You know, we don't tolerate physical child abuse, and neither should we tolerate mental child abuse. Teaching a child that they are dirty, rotten, sinful, and flawed, and that this omnipotent being is constantly reading their thoughts, monitoring their actions and thoughts. A child believes all this, and it carries over into adulthood. Think about how frightening that is. If you've never thought about it before, remember, I experienced this firsthand. It's scary. Think about that. Think about you believing that there's this being that's reading your mind constantly, and that you are naturally dirty and sinful and flawed, and you have to please this being, or else you're going to be tortured for eternity. You teach a child that, they're going to have issues. It's going to have problems. So the whole point, you know, my channel is about many different things, and we are much more than a channel. But, you know, the point is to wake up the world and bring the world to a new consciousness, so we can create a new humanity and a new earth, and an earth where everyone has the freedom to actualize themselves, where we the collective can actualize, where we can live together in harmony and symmetry. You know, where our differences are celebrated with regard to, you know, race, gender, sex, you know, orientation, whatever, all these things, where we are celebrating each other and learning from each other and creating a beautiful world. So my whole point with this is you know, if you're out there and you don't really understand why we are against mainstream religion, just please look at what it's doing, look at the damages that are happening, look where it has the potential to go if it remains unchecked. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you learned something from it. And if you are suffering from religious trauma syndrome, please speak up about it. Don't feel bullied into being quiet. Let people know that it's a real issue and a real problem. Spread awareness about it so we can end this, you know, awful cycle of mental abuse. I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports on Patreon, especially Cassidy, Alana, Renaissance Fairy, Michael, and Alan. You guys are awesome. If you enjoy my work, if you ever felt like that you've gotten something from my videos or learned something, consider supporting on Patreon. You know, you help me, I help you, we help the world. It's a feedback loop, helps out a lot. Patreon is the best way to support my work. Anyone that supports on Patreon on any tier or tier 2 or higher on YouTube gets access to our weekly secret live streams, and we're having one right after this, our hidden Discord server, The Citadel, and a lot more. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.